use the terms sources and uses, and you probably have seen this or heard this before, whether we're talking about sources, which are inflows of cash flow to the organization, or uses, which are outflows of cash from the organization, we want to be very clear. In operations, obviously our net income, our non-cash deductions, and our changes in working capital. Now, working capital is a term that is used in finance when we compare the total of our current assets to the total of our current liabilities. It's an important measure of where our cash is being created on the balance sheet and being used. As our organization grows, our inventory to support more sales usually increases. Our receivables from the increasing sales usually increase. That means we need more payables, more current liabilities to support them. So if we look at the total current assets minus the total current liabilities, the difference is measured in currency, which is working capital. As an organization grows, frequently the current assets will grow faster than the current liabilities. That requires a use of cash, because as our inventory grows, we have more cash invested there. As our accounts receivable grow, we have more cash invested there. So that's part of the breakdown. On the investing side, when we sell capital assets, it'll be a source of cash. Our depreciation is a source of cash. Again, we're going to look at both the inflows and outflows in each of these areas. With financing, new borrowings and new sales of stock are both sources of cash. So now let's look to see how we use cash in these same areas. Within operations, the changes in working capital. Again, as our revenues grow, our current assets grow, our inventory and receivables grow, they use up. We have to invest more cash in those. We buy inventory today, we don't get that cash back until we not only make a sale, but collect that sale. So as inventory grows, it uses more cash. As we acquire buildings, vehicles, vessels for our long-term expansion, that also uses cash flow. And on the financing side, as we repay loans and as we pay cash dividends, those are financing uses. So what are the important things to look for? On the operating side, remember, this should be the largest single source of cash. That tells us that our business, our main operations, are creating most of our cash. So if you're doing a quick analysis of an organization, look at the cash flow statement. Within that, look at the operating side. Is the subtotal in operations positive or negative? If it's negative, that might be a concern. Look at previous periods. If it's been negative for 2 or 3 periods, this organization is in trouble. Most organizations are going to have a positive cash flow from operations. It's a source of cash. Great. Is that positive cash flow number larger than both investing and financing? If it is, that's what you want to see. On the investing side, is the organization growing? How do we tell? Is the organization using cash flow in most years to acquire new assets? If it is, it's probably growing. That's what we'd like to see in most situations. If you see an organization where investing section of the cash flow is a source of cash in consecutive periods, you may want to ask a question. Why are they liquidating their assets? Are they going out of business? Are they changing the business? What's going on? That's not the most common situation. And what to look for on the financing side. If they're using cash to repay long-term debt, is it as agreed? Is any new debt coming in at least as large as the old debt? And if it isn't, Just ask why. Does the organization pay cash dividends? If it does it pay them every period? Does it pay the same amount each period? The answers here are not necessarily good or bad, but they'll tell you something about the organization. The last point here is, are they repurchasing? Are they buying back any of their own shares? That would be a use of cash in the financing section. And that always brings up the question, why would we buy back any of our own shares? There's 5 perfectly good reasons why an organization might do that, but at least you want to ask the question. And the final point here is, on the ending cash, is it positive or negative? So the ending cash for the year, is it increasing the cash in the organization, which is generally what we'd like to see, or is the amount of cash in the organization being reduced, and why? So to wrap up our Module 3 here, we'll go back to our linked financial statements. If you look at the left, here's our opening balance sheet. It shows our cash, the rest of our current assets, our long-term assets. Below, current liabilities, long-term, our capital stock, which is just another term for common stock, and our retained earnings. You can see just by looking at that balance sheet, there's an interesting issue. This organization has negative retained earnings. You'd want to ask the question, what has happened in the history of this company where they've accumulated more losses than profits? We can't tell just by looking at the numbers. We have to dig deeper. You'll notice the net income, 118.5, bottom line in the income statement, then is linked to the first line on the cash flow statement. There's your net income and your non-cash deductions, your operating, investing, financing cash, and net increase in cash. Well, if we add that to the original cash of 16.6, that justifies on the closing balance sheet the amount of cash, etc. So it's not only important to understand the basics of each of the 3 financial statements and the 3 components of each of the 3, but how they're linked together, so we understand it's actually easier to understand some fundamentals about an organization without diving very deeply. We have an opening balance sheet, an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a closing balance sheet. We can get an awful lot of very good information about how well an organization is doing. That ends Module 3, and I look forward to talking to you in Module 4.
Incredible. Like we always say, if you've got any questions, get back us either in the Facebook group, on the Skype chat, or send us an email, which you will find at the bottom of this training, and both myself and Daniel will be able to respond to you as soon as possible. I'm finding this training very, very useful for my own business, and I'm sure you will apply this as well in your own business, and you'll find the information that Daniel is sharing, very useful for your own business. Once again, thanks, Daniel, for that. Before we go to the next module.
You're very welcome, Yukai.